Hello BookTube. This is the first in a series of videos I plan to do. I'm calling it an armchair sailor because that's what I am now. For many years I was a professional sailor in the Coast Guard. But for many years my time at sea has been spent in books. That can be maritime fiction or nonfiction or nautical fiction or sea stories, or however you decide you'd like to designate the subgenre. It's usually historical fiction, takes place at sea, mostly in the age of sail, but not always. And I'll show some series that are from later periods of history. And as I think about it, there's also some other historical fiction, namely from the Napoleonic era, like the Sharp series by Bernard Cornwell, take place on land and some at sea. But for the most part, it's going to be these type of volumes that are usually series. There is great nautical fiction it comes in the form of short stories. There's some great stuff that are standalone novels. I'll get to some of those as I do these. But I thought I'd start today with a series by Dudley Pope. They're called the Ramage Novels. My versions of them are from McBooks Press, an excellent press that reprints many of these classics, and they're in handsome large format trades. These have been well loved and read many times, and well, you can see right behind me I have some Alexander Kent. But today we'll talk about Dudley Pope, and I do not have all of them. I believe there's 18 in the Ramage series. And Dudley Pope enlisted. He was from Britain, enlisted in the and I think it was the Merchant Marine, or I got a list right here. He was born in Ashford, Kent, 29 December of 1925, and he joined the Home Guard at the age of 14 because he basically concealed his age, and joined the Merchant Navy, correct, okay, as a cadet at the age of 16. His ship was torpedoed the next year, 1942, so this is World War II. Afterwards, he spent 2 weeks in a lifeboat with a few other survivors. After he was invalided out, the only obvious sign of injuries was that he had a joint missing from one finger due to gangrene. He also had back problems. He had some medical issues that sprung out of that. He became a newspaper man afterwards. Wrote some maritime histories. Was great friends with. I don't know if he's great friends, but he's encouraged by C.S. Forester, the author of Africa Queen and the great Horatio Hornblower novels, to try his hand at nautical fiction, which he did. Ends up making the Ramage series, and spent much of his life living on sailboats, and ended up down in the Caribbean eventually, and medical issues right at the end of his life made it impossible for him to live aboard, and he moved on land and passed away. I think he was in his early 70s. So, but I'm here to look at the books. So I have, let's see here, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of them. So that would be all I've read. So that means that I'm short maybe 6 that I haven't read. So you'll notice a quick edit there. When I went back and reviewed the video, I realized that the only thing anybody was seeing was the top of my thinning hairline. So we're going to shift this up a little bit, and I'll go back through these books, which is enjoyable. No problem with that. The Ramage Novels by Dudley Pope. The first of these came out in 1965, and the McBooks Press is 2000. All the cover art on these is by Paul Wright, so I won't keep mentioning that. All my copies are McBooks Press. I won't keep mentioning that. So the first is Ramage, the Lord Ramage Novels, #1. And I do like to look to see if there's a map. In this case, there is. And it's the voyages of Lieutenant Ramage, RN, which is Royal Navy, while carrying out the orders of Vice Admiral Sir John Jervis and Commander Horatio Nelson, September to October 1796. So, okay, there's going to be a little bit of a glare by changing this angle, but still better than looking at the top of my head. So in this one, the young lieutenant and peer of the realm receives special orders direct from Nelson himself, which bring news of a mission close to his own heart. In a daring foray under the very nose of the French Mediterranean fleet, Ramage is to sail his tiny cutter close to the Italian shore and rescue a party of stranded aristocrats from Napoleon's fast advancing army. And then #2 here is Ramage and the Drumbeat. So here's the cover art again. And this is, came out in '67. This McBook Press is 2000. And let's see here. In Ramage and the Drumbeat, the lieutenant is ordered to proceed to Gibraltar with all possible dispatch aboard His Majesty's ships Kathleen to support Lord Nelson in a battle with the Spanish off Cape Trafalgar. And then the third one, give you as much of a view of this I can without too much glare. And again, we'll look for a map. There is not one. Came out originally in '69. This again is McBooks Press 2000. In Ramage and the Freebooters, the lieutenant is summoned by the Admiralty and given command of the brig Triton. But like the rest of the Navy, Triton's crew has mutinied. Sympathizing with some of their complaints, Ramage also knows that if he fails to deliver 3 sealed dispatches to admirals off Brest and Cadiz and in the Caribbean, he will become a convenient scapegoat. And then Ramage, #4 is Governor Ramage, RN. I really like that cover. This one originally came out in '73 and McBooks 2000. Don't see a map. Lieutenant Lord Ramage and the men of the Triton brig are assigned to help escort a convoy of fat merchant ships off Jamaica. Unfortunately, Rear Admiral Goddard is in charge and determined to continue his vendetta against Ramage. When a mysterious and sinister ship joins the convoy, the stakes rise as Ramage and his men fight to protect a family of important French aristocrats traveling incognito, and the fury of an approaching hurricane threatens to destroy them all. So weather is always an important thing in nautical fiction. You know, the violence of it often is a background character in its own right. So this next one is #5, is Ramage's Prize. This came out in '74. Nice little chart. The Atlantic Ocean. It's post office packet routes to and from the West Indies, 1793 to 1801. The West Indian bases are desperate. Post vessels, a vital communications link between England and the West Indies in the war against France, are mysteriously disappearing and no packets have arrived with orders in months. Were the privateers out in full force again? Had Napoleon's navy a secret new weapon? Lieutenant Lord Nicholas Ramage sets out from Jamaica to discover what treachery is threatening to throw the British Navy into chaos. But what he finds is totally unexpected. And then we have Ramage and the Guillotine, which is #6. Originally came out in '75. Across the English Channel, Napoleon has massed a great invasion flotilla. English forces under Lord Nelson are all but paralyzed, not knowing the size, strength, or time of the foreign onslaught. In a daring spy scheme to protect British shores, Ramage is chosen to plumb the secrets of the French. The penalty for failure? The guillotine. Then, number 7, Ramage's Diamond. Another lovely cover. Should mention the artist one more time. Oh, there's a cat made me jump over there. What are you doing, buddy? I'm sick of listening to me talk, probably. Again, it's Paul Wright. This originally came out in '76, and this McBook press is 2001. Does have a map, Martinique and Diamond Rock. Again, these are always helpful in nonfiction and fiction. I mean, I always find them helpful. So the youngest captain in His Majesty's Navy, with a reputation for landing impossible assignments, Lord Ramage is dispatched to the Caribbean islands of Martinique and Diamond Rock. The mission seems humdrum. Barricade the French within Fort Royal. But sent to sea in the Juno with a crew grown restless and undisciplined under the prior command of a drunk, Ramage realizes his vessel may not be up to battle with the French. So that was Ramage's Diamond. And that was number 7. Number 8 is Ramage's Mutiny. Prerequisite beautiful cover again. And it came out originally in '77. And McBooks Press 2001. And it has a map of the West Indies. My cat is making funny noises over there. I think I'm bothering her. This is a new place to film. So let's see here. The vicious mutineers aboard the British ship Jocasta had surrendered their vessel to Spain. Sailing aboard the frigate Calypso, Captain Lord Ramage receives Admiralty orders to recover her by any means. The Jocasta is held in the heavily fortified Spanish port of Santa Cruz, but Ramage will stop at nothing to defy the odds and cut out the imprisoned vessel, even if it means inciting another mutiny on board his own ship. That would be a problem. And then Ramage and the Rebels. And this was 1978. Here's a map of the West Indies. A sinking British ship, her crew and passengers, men and women alike, ruthlessly murdered at the hands of a French privateer. This is the nightmare Ramage and his crew on the Calypso stumble upon while engaged in a sweep for freebooters in the waters off Jamaica. Supported by his men in a thirst for righteous vengeance, Ramage sets sail to bring the murderers to justice. And then Ramage's Touch, the Lord Ramage Novels number 10. We have here the Voyage of the Frigate Calypso under the command of Captain Lord Ramage, with Elba marked quite clearly there. Tyrrhenian Sea. When did this come out? This came out in '79. McBooks Press, 2001. Post-Captain Ramage is prowling the Tuscan coast and far from English aid when he encounters a daunting French invasion fleet. As the enemy gathers strength, Ramage must decide how to thwart its actions with only the frigate Calypso and a pair of bomb catches. A prizes of combat, but clumsy at best. With Frenchmen on every side, can the vessels and crew at hand answer his orders? Then we have Ramage's Signal, which is number 11. This came out originally in '80, McBooks Press 2001. Lovely map here with the Mediterranean. The Calypso and her captain, Lord Nicholas Ramage, venture further into French-dominated waters of the Mediterranean on an Admiralty mission to sink, burn, and destroy. Aiming to confuse and distract the enemy, Ramage and his men find themselves isolated and outnumbered as they take on the might of Napoleon's fleet. And then my last one, but not the last one in the series. This is Ramage and the Renegades, the Lord Ramage Novels, number 12. So here's the cover. Again, a nice artwork. Really like this guy, Paul Wright. We have the island of Trinidad, off the coast of Brazil. With the Treaty of Amiens signed, hostilities have ceased, at least on paper. Nelson's crews are standing down and Ramage is on leave when he receives secret Admiralty orders to inspect the small island of Trinidad off the coast of Brazil. Reaching the island, Ramage and the crew of the Calypso fetch up in a battle to free some captive merchant ships, and a beautiful woman passenger as they cross swords with the bloodthirsty pirates. So that's as far as I've gotten. So after the Renegades, you would have had Ramage's Devil, Ramage's Trial, Ramage's Challenge, Ramage to Trafalgar, or at Trafalgar, excuse me, Ramage and the Saracen, and Ramage and the Dido. So I don't have quite the complete set, but what I've read I've enjoyed. I don't think in most of these series that we'll end up covering that I've really ever read them in order. It's serendipity. Did I find an old paperback somewhere? It might be the fourth in the series, and it's never caused me a problem with any of the writers I'm going to be covering. These stories have to be, the individual books have to be able to stand on their own. So if you find them in a, something like a Ramage novel and it's the fourth or fifth one, I would, if you like historical fiction, pick it up, read it. It is nice to get them eventually fill in the blanks. I think I read the Hornblower novels completely out of order, and then again I'm reading Patrick O'Brian in precise order. So the Aubrey Maturin series. So it is what you have access to. The McBook Press has been handy for me because I'm able to track down some writers that have been out of print for a while. So that's the first in an Armchair Sailor, which is going to be a series I do on historical fiction. Mostly series, mostly set at sea, but there will be exceptions. I'm already thinking I'd love to do the Sharp novels, George MacDonald Fraser's Flashman, some of Bernard Cornwell's stuff would be great. They all have a relationship. They're adventures. They tend to have good battle scenes, a lot of excitement. But we'll start mostly and primarily with books set at sea, and they won't all be series. Sometimes I'll do a standalone novel. There's some great ones, and it would be fun to even discuss some short fiction. And there's plenty of that out there too. So again, thank you Zoe Wall, who I've had a conversation with about doing this series, and for everybody else who over the last year and a half, I guess it's been now, on BookTube, has made comments that they enjoy this type of fiction. And again, thank you BookTube.